So converting fractions, decimals and percentages. Okay. Now, if I were to ask you what's 1/2 of something as a percentage, I'm sure you'd know that that was 50%. And if I asked you what 1/2 was as a decimal, I'm sure you'd know that that's 0.5. Okay. Now if we have a quarter, now a quarter is half of a half, so that must be half of the 50%, so that must be 25%. Okay. Now a quarter as a decimal is 0.25. You may or may not know this, but this is a fact, that half of 0.5 is 0.25. Now if I was to just add a 0 after here, we have 0.50. Now 0.50 is exactly the same as 0.5. Now hopefully you can see here 50% is 0.50. 50, 50. If we have 25%, that's the same as 0.25. So there's a definite link between percentages and decimals. So for example, if I have 87% and they said what's that as a decimal, we know that it's just these two numbers after the decimal point. If we have 23%, then that's going to be 0.23. It really is that simple. And it also works the other way. If they said what's 0.16 as a percentage, we take the first two numbers after the decimal point, so we get 16%. So you didn't really think it would be that simple, but it is. So decimals and percentages are directly linked with one another. Okay. So let's say we had 0.375. So now we have three numbers. Now we can't say that's 375%, because remember our rule is the first two numbers. Now what's actually happening is that the decimal point is moving back 2 places. Okay, because we're multiplying by 100. So if this moves back 2 places, we get 16%. So if this moves back 2 places, the decimal point moves from here to between the 7 and the 5. So we get 37.5%. So if we had 0.614, change that to a percentage, we just move the decimal point back twice, so we get 61.4%. Okay. Now the same is true if we go the other way. So if we have 23.5%, the decimal point just goes in the opposite direction. So we get 0.23 2, 3, 5. This is something that you can practice just by converting numbers, but I'm hoping that you can see that there's a direct connection between percentages and decimals. Okay. Now, to convert a fraction is not more difficult, but it'll be easier for me to show you. So if we take something that we know, for example, a quarter. Now we know a quarter is 25% and we know a quarter is 0.25. All we do is this. We divide the bottom number into the top number. So when you do this, it should look wrong, okay? Because we're dividing 4 into 1, okay? We're dividing 4 into 1. And we know we can't do that. But after the 1 is a decimal point and an infinite number of zeros. So 4 into 1, as I said, we know we can't do. So we write 0, put the decimal point down, and we carry the 1 across. Now 4's into 10, I know goes 2, and 2 will be left over, so I carry that across. Now 4's into 20 goes 5. So this is how we get 0.25. We divide the bottom number into the top. Okay. So if we have, for example, 1/5, and they say change that to a decimal or a percentage because we know it's simple, then we divide the bottom into the top. And as I say, you'll know if you're right because it should look wrong. Not often you hear maths teachers tell you this, but it should look wrong. Okay, so we put the top number down and then decimal point and some zeros. Now 5's into 1 we know doesn't go, so this 1 gets carried across. Don't forget to put in a decimal point. 5's into 10 goes 2. So 1/5 is the same as 0.2 or 0.20 if you want. So this would be 20% as a percentage or 0.2 as a decimal. Okay, so let's say we had 3/5, and they say convert that to a decimal and a percentage. So we divide the bottom into the top. So 5's into 3. So we put a decimal point down and some zeros. When I do this, if there's a decimal point here, I automatically put a decimal point above it, so that stops me forgetting. Now 5's into 3 we know doesn't go, so the 3 gets carried across. 5's into 30 I know goes 6. So I can say that 3/5 is the same as 0.6 as a decimal, and is the same. Now remember, we take the first two numbers, so because there's no number here we write a 0. This would be the same as 60%. Okay, now I hope that helps. I hope I haven't confused you too much, but if you use the worksheets that we can give you, then once you get used to this, it's very, very simple. So decimals and percentages have a direct link, so converting one to the other, you can see, is very simple. Making a fraction a decimal or a percentage, we divide the bottom number into the top. We get our answer, and that is our decimal equivalent. Okay.